This is a response to AngelHairdo's video, God Already Got All the Good Ones, itself a response to Holy Hallucinations 6. I have to admit that when I saw your response, I was a little surprised that you didn't address my allegations of ignorance, stupidity, hypocrisy, and dishonesty. Instead, what seems to have upset you was this.
This video is a response to the outrageous allegations cited here.
And I'd like to point out that the reason that we're doing so great is because of individuals who are willing to forego the emotional security blanket of your ludicrous beliefs, open their minds, accept reality for what it is and not what they want it to be, and then strive to understand it. It has nothing to do with you or your fellow sheep who'd still be living in huts and wiping your asses with leaves if everyone thought like you do.
It is completely ludicrous to assume that for the entire duration of the Judeo-Christian faith, that not one single scientific contribution can be attributed to the religious.
I agree. It would be ludicrous, and that's why I didn't claim it. Did you actually watch my video? Because if you did, you're either incapable of understanding the English language, and making this crap up, or you're back to building and attacking strawmen again. I really do hope for your sake that it's just the lack of intellectual capacity that's preventing you from understanding my response, because otherwise that great imaginary elevator will be heading down when it's time for you to get on it. So where exactly did I claim that not a single scientific contribution could be attributed to the religious? If you look back, you'll find that I said no such thing, and that's because I do try and choose my words with some thought and care, because words are important. And if you'd taken the time to listen to what I'd actually said, instead of just what you thought I was saying, you would have saved yourself some further embarrassment. I'll elaborate after we listen to a little more of your misinformation.
You speak as if this cold war between the God-fearing and godless is nothing new. Well, I assure you, buddy, it is new. Brand new.
Okay, firstly, I never mentioned any war. And secondly, don't you think you're being a little overdramatic? Because I don't have a problem with moderate theists, those that are prepared to accept that their beliefs are subject to modification in the face of reality, and who don't feel obliged to proclaim the superiority of their religion to the world or to cram it down the throats of those unfortunate enough to cross their path. If I do sound confrontational, it's because I have no tolerance for religious zealots who belittle the achievements of science in order to propagate their ignorance. You cross the line when you attack rationality in order to justify your delusions. If you kept your ignorant opinions on matters you obviously don't understand to yourself, I wouldn't be calling you out on your bullshit, buddy.
Your outlandish assertion that people are black and white, that all religious men are sheep-like and completely unscientific, and that all atheists are rational, logical, and supremely intelligent is complete BS. Admit it.
I'll only admit that the extent of your ability to misinterpret and twist the words of others is breathtaking. Where exactly did I say any of this? I think you'll find that I didn't. At no time did I use the word theist or atheist in this context. Instead, I chose your kind and rationalist, and that was not an accident. I'm more than aware that many of the great scientists of the past were theists, some to a greater and some to a lesser extent, and I'm also aware that there are a large number of theistic scientists working today. So when I used the words your kind, I wasn't referring to all theists, I was referring to you and your kind of theist. The close-minded, blinkered, intellectually crippled scriptural literalists who believe every word of the crude myths in their holy books despite the lack of any evidence to support them, and an immense and insurmountable mountain of evidence that shows that they're just the work of ignorant and superstitious savages from a bygone age. And when I used the word rationalist, I was referring to anyone who bases their view of reality upon what can be reproducibly observed and measured and on logical deductions that stem from these observations. Rational theists accept reality for what it is based on the evidence, and when this conflicts with their beliefs, they're able to weave their religion into reality and not twist and contort reality to fit their religion. Rationality is not mutually exclusive with either theism or atheism, but it is incompatible with your kind of fundamentalist religion and with unintelligent non-belief. But with that said, there's still abundant evidence that shows that there are strong correlations that influence the areas of overlap. Although I didn't state these definitions explicitly, if you'd had the ability to use the material between your ears for anything other than stopping your skull from caving in, you should have been able to pick up on these subtleties. So the reality is that I never did state that all theists were sheep. nor that all atheists were intelligent, rational, and logical. Why are you putting words into my mouth? Why the predilection for lying? One more time. Not all religious people are scriptural literalists, and not all atheists are rationalists. If you want to criticize me, then please criticize what I said, and not what you assumed I said because you didn't really listen.
Anyone with half a brain would realize that your ignorant anti-Christian bias totally robs your video of any validity that it might have otherwise had. And if they don't, then they're all as sheep-like as you claim we are.
So you claim that my stance on religion robs my video of any validity? Is that really the best you can do? You realize that the standard procedure for invalidating someone's premises and arguments is to show that they're false or fallacious? Don't you have any actual responses to my other points? No defense of your ignorance or deceit? This ad hominem attack makes a nice companion to your growing collection of straw men, but it really is pretty pathetic, and you'd be ashamed of yourself if you knew any better.
Christians have done plenty to further the progress of civilization. For starters, Jesus himself was a carpenter. Yeah, he built houses.
This is so ludicrous that it doesn't even deserve comment, but I will point out that while building houses and displaying butt crack are both useful skills, they hardly contribute to the growth of mankind's knowledge.
Also, the Bible itself had a passage that stated the world was round, centuries before scientists made the same observation. Isaiah 40:22 says, "It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers."
I would appreciate it if you kept your Bible verses between you and your preacher, because they aren't worth anything to me. Now, I have a question. Do you understand the difference between a circle and a sphere? Obviously not, and neither did the barbarians who wrote your Book of Tripe. In fact, rationalists have discovered that the Earth isn't even a sphere, but an oblate spheroid with an asymmetric bulge below the equator. This is a perfect example of why I get pissed at your kind. When you try and take credit for mankind's discoveries and hand them over to long-dead desert nomads and to your magic man, I will call you on your crap. See my first Holy Hallucinations video to see exactly what I think of these post hoc rationalizations of scriptural revelations of scientific knowledge.
And that's not to mention Noah's Ark, the very first cargo ship, which God himself gave very specific instructions to Noah on how to build.
And which ItsTheSuperFly debunked in his very specific videos that show why this particular craft that your God designed would have fallen apart as soon as it hit the water, let alone the logistical impossibility of collecting 2 of every species from all over the world, let alone the impossibility of fitting them all on the boat the size described in your bedtime story, let alone the complete and utter lack of any physical evidence for the alleged flood that supposedly happened only 4,000 years ago. These are just a few of the problems with this particular fable, and the only thing more pathetic than actually believing it are the logical and psychological pretzels that your kind tie themselves into trying to explain them away. Your lamitude just grows and grows.
Scores of religious men have made scientific contributions all throughout history.
And they weren't just religious, they were also rationalists. I very much doubt that if these individuals were of your kind, they would have made the progress they did, because your absolute dogmatism, your smug insistence that your books are true, does nothing but stifle the quest for knowledge, since you already know the answer to everything. You guessed it. God did it. While these men were working, your kind were making themselves useful by calculating how many angels could fit onto the head of a pin. And in fact, besides not contributing to humanity's progress, your kind has actively retarded it. The Middle East used to be the world's center of learning before Islam reared its ugly head, and the Muslim equivalents of your kind have seen to it that it has remained in a time warp. In fact, it's particularly telling that Copernicus delayed publication of his On the Revolutions of the Heavenly Spheres because he feared the scorn and perhaps the retribution of your kind, and that your kind jailed Galileo for expounding the heliocentric model, and that your kind did not allow the publication of Copernicus's book for almost 300 years after his death. And today it's your kind that's trying to remove evolution from science class or insist that your stupid stories are taught beside it. And it's your kind that helped prevent stem cell research that could save millions from devastating disease. And it's your kind that sticks its nose into the private lives of others when it's none of your fucking business. So as you can see, my earlier criticism wasn't against the religious in general, it was against the subset of believers that refuse to think, that refuse to shift their unbending dogmatic positions against a constantly changing reality, that try their hardest to drag our modern world back into the Dark Ages. Those moronic, retarded religious nut jobs like you.